Hey, keep it down.
Dominic Graves stopped mid-laugh.
Did this little black girl just tell me to shut up?
I said keep it down. People are eating.
He stood up slow. 6 men behind him went quiet.
People are eating.
He
Look at
repeated,
you,
mocking her
a
voice.
broke, dirty little dog, carrying plates for scraps. Serve, fetch, shut up, and smile. That's all your kind ever does.
Sit down. I'm not asking again.
Or what? Make me.
He grabbed her wrist, pulled her close.
Come on. Hit me.
She didn't blink.
I dare you.
He shoved her backward, hard.
Think you're tough?
And that was his mistake. Because Dominic Graves had no idea who he just put his hands on. The fluorescent lights at Rosie's diner buzzed like tired insects. 5:45 in the morning. Wanda Yates wiped down the counter with a rag that smelled like bleach and yesterday's coffee. Same rag, same counter, same circle she traced every day before the first customer walked in. She moved through the empty diner the way water moves through a familiar riverbed. No wasted steps, no hesitation. Coffee pot in the right hand, filter in the left, grounds measured without looking. Muscle memory built over 4 years of opening shifts nobody else wanted. The kind of shifts where the sky was still black when you unlocked the front door, and the only company was the hum of the walk-in cooler. Rosie's sat on the corner of 87th and Ashland, Southside Chicago. The kind of place where regulars didn't need menus, and new faces got stared at until they proved they belonged. Cracked vinyl booths, a jukebox that hadn't worked since Obama's first term. Wanda knew every regular by name. Knew that Gerald took his eggs scrambled dry. Knew that Mrs. Patterson wanted her toast almost burnt. Knew that the morning construction crew needed their coffee black and immediate before anyone said good morning. She was 28, looked younger, kept her hair pulled back tight, wore long sleeves even in July, even when the kitchen heat made everyone else roll their cuffs. If you watched her closely, and most people didn't, you'd notice things. The way she caught a falling plate without looking, her hand snapping out like a reflex she couldn't quite kill. The faded scar tissue across both knuckles, hidden under the cuffs of her uniform. The way she positioned herself near the wall when the diner got crowded, back never fully exposed. Her co-workers called her the Ghost. Not cruel, just accurate. Wanda clocked in, worked her shift, clocked out. No drinks after work, no birthday parties. No stories about her life before Chicago. The television above the counter flickered to ESPN. A replay of last night's UFC main card. 2 women in the octagon. The shorter one landed a spinning elbow that dropped her opponent like a bag of sand. The crowd erupted. Wanda's hand stopped mid-wipe. Her eyes locked on the screen. Something crossed her face. Not excitement, not nostalgia. Something closer to grief. It lasted exactly 1 second. She reached for the remote and changed the channel to the weather. Saturday night, 9:15. Rosie's diner was full. Every booth taken, every stool occupied. The smell of fried catfish and hot grease hung thick in the air. Wanda moved between tables like she always did. Quiet, efficient, invisible. Then the headlights hit the front windows. 3 black SUVs pulled up to the curb. Engines off. Doors opened in sequence. Not rushed, not casual. Practiced. 6 men stepped out first. Dark coats, thick necks. They scanned the sidewalk like they were checking for cameras before they walked in. The last door opened and Dominic Graves stepped onto the pavement. He didn't hurry. Men like Dominic never hurried. He adjusted his cufflinks, smoothed the front of his coat, and walked through the door like he owned the building. Maybe he did. On the south side, people whispered his name the way they whispered about weather. Something dangerous you couldn't control. The noise inside Rosie's dropped by half the second he stepped in. Forks paused. Conversations went quiet. Gerald, the morning regular, grabbed his jacket and left through the side door without finishing his coffee. He knew. Everyone knew. Dominic pointed at the big corner booth. A family of 4 sat there. Mother, father, 2 kids under 10. Move. 1 word. The father looked up. looked at the 6 men, looked at his children. He picked up his daughter, took his wife's hand, and walked out. Didn't ask for the check, didn't say a word, just left. Dominic slid into the booth like it had been reserved for him. His men spread across 3 tables around him. One of them, a thick-jawed man named Bruno, snapped his fingers at Tammy, Wanda's co-worker. "Sweetheart, water, now!" Tammy rushed over. Her hands were shaking. She set down a glass and water splashed over the rim onto the table. Bruno grabbed her wrist. "You just spilled water on my table." I'm sorry, Sorry? Dominic leaned back, watching. "That's the best you got? You spill on my man's table and sorry is all you can say?" He waved his hand. "Get out of my face! Send someone who can actually do the job!" Tammy's eyes went red. She turned and walked to the kitchen. Through the round window in the swinging door, Wanda could see her leaning over the sink, shoulders shaking. Manager Rick stood behind the register. He saw everything. He did nothing. He stared at the receipts in his hands like they were the most important documents in the world. His fingers trembled. He knew Dominic's name. He knew what happened to the last restaurant owner who called the cops on Graves and his crew. That man now ran a laundromat in Indiana. The lucky version. Wanda watched from the far end of the counter. Her jaw was tight. Her hand gripped the rag so hard her knuckles went pale under the skin. She looked at Tammy through the kitchen window, looked at Rick pretending to count receipts, looked at the dining room full of people who suddenly couldn't make eye contact with anyone. She folded the rag, set it down on the counter, straightened her apron. Then she picked up a notepad, walked across the dining room, and stopped in front of Dominic Graves' table. "What can I get you?" Her voice was flat, steady, like she was the only person in the room who hadn't noticed the wolves walk in. Dominic looked up from the booth. His eyes moved over Wanda the way a man looks at something he's already decided doesn't matter. Well, they sent a replacement." He tilted his head. "What happened to the last one? She cry?" "What can I get you?" Wanda said again. Same tone, same flat delivery. The man next to Dominic, Bruno, let out a short laugh. "This one's got a mouth." Dominic leaned forward. "Yeah, let's see how long that lasts." He picked up the water glass Tammy had left behind and turned it upside down on the table. Water spread across the surface and dripped onto the floor. "Clean it up." Wanda looked at the puddle, looked at Dominic. "That's not how this works. You want to order, I'll take your order. You want to make a mess? Clean it yourself." The booth went silent. Bruno stopped chewing his toothpick. 2 of Dominic's men at the next table turned their heads. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Dominic smiled. Not the kind that meant he was happy, the kind that meant someone was about to have a very bad night. "You hear that, boys? Little Miss Apron over here thinks she's in charge." He stood up, slowly. He was 6'2", 240, and every inch of him was built to intimidate. He stepped toward Wanda until there was barely a foot between them. "You know what I see when I look at you?" His voice dropped low enough that only she could hear. "I see a girl who came from nothing, who's got nothing, who's going nowhere. A broke, dirty little thing who wipes tables and says, 'Yes, sir,' because that's all she'll ever be good for." Wanda didn't step back. Her eyes stayed level with his collarbone. She didn't look up. "Are you done?" Dominic's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to this. Women flinched. Men looked away. That was how the world worked around Dominic Graves. But this woman in a stained apron and non-slip shoes was standing in front of him like his name meant nothing. "You think this is a game?" He grabbed the front of her apron and pulled her forward. Her feet slid on the wet floor, but she didn't fall. "You think you can talk to me like that and walk away? Let go. Answer me. Let go of my apron." He held on. His crew watched. 40-something people in booths and at the counter watched. Nobody moved. Nobody pulled out a phone to call the police. A few pulled out phones to record. Dominic yanked her closer. "I dare you. Go ahead. Think you're tough? Show me. Hit me. Right here, right now, in front of everyone." He released her apron with a shove. Wanda stumbled back 2 steps, caught herself on the edge of a table. A coffee cup rattled in its saucer. She straightened up, adjusted her apron, and for the first time all night, she looked Dominic Graves directly in the eyes. Something passed between them. Something Dominic didn't recognize because he'd never seen it before, not directed at him. It wasn't fear, it wasn't anger, it was recognition. The way a retired surgeon looks at a scalpel, the way a pilot looks at a cockpit she hasn't sat in for years. Dominic saw it. He just didn't understand what it meant.
That's what I thought.
He said, and turned back toward the booth. He took exactly 2 steps before Wanda spoke. Don't! One word. Quiet. But the tone had changed. The flat, professional waitress voice was gone. What replaced it was something older, something trained. Dominic stopped, turned around. What did you just say? Don't sit down, don't touch me again, and don't touch anyone else in this restaurant. He stared at her. Then he laughed. Loud, theatrical for the benefit of his men. Or what? She didn't answer, and that silence was louder than anything she could have said. 9 years earlier, Detroit, a gym called Iron House on the east side of Gratiot Avenue. The place smelled like sweat and duct tape. Heavy bags hung from chains bolted into exposed ceiling beams. The floor was cracked concrete covered in rubber mats that curled at the edges. A hand-painted sign above the door read, "You quit when I say you quit." That sign belonged to Earl Brooks. Earl was 61 years old, former amateur boxer, 3-time Golden Gloves qualifier who never made it past regionals because he couldn't afford to stop working. He'd opened Iron House with money he saved driving a city bus for 22 years. The gym was never profitable. He didn't care. He kept the lights on with weekend boxing clinics for neighborhood kids and a stubbornness that bordered on religion. And for the last decade, he'd trained exactly one fighter he believed could go all the way, Wanda Yates. She walked into his gym at 14, skinny, angry, running from a group home where the older kids took whatever they wanted and the staff pretended not to see. She didn't ask to learn how to fight. She asked to learn how to stop being afraid. Earl saw something in her that first day. Not talent, that came later. What he saw was discipline. The girl didn't complain, didn't make excuses. She showed up every morning at 5, did whatever he told her to do, and never once asked when she'd be ready. She just trained. While other kids slept in or scrolled their phones, Wanda was shadowboxing in front of a cracked mirror, correcting her own form before Earl even arrived. By 16, she was sparring with women twice her age. By 18, she'd gone undefeated in regional amateur circuits. By 19, she had a record that made promoters call Earl's phone at midnight. 14 wins, 0 losses, 11 by knockout. They called her the Viper, not because she was aggressive, but because she was patient. She waited, watched, and when the opening came, she struck once. It was always enough. The night everything changed was a Thursday in October. Wanda was headlining a card at the Fox Theater. Her opponent was Paige Whitmore, a 23-year-old veteran with 31 fights and a chin made of concrete. The kind of fighter who walked through punches to land her own. The crowd loved her. The odds were even. Round 2. Paige threw a looping right hand. Wanda slipped it, pivoted left, and countered with a short elbow that caught Paige on the temple. Clean, precise. The kind of strike Earl had drilled into her 10,000 times. Paige's legs went first, then her eyes. She dropped face first onto the canvas, and the sound her body made when it hit the mat was something Wanda would hear in her sleep for the next 9 years. The referee waved it off. The crowd roared. But Wanda wasn't celebrating. She was watching Paige's corner rush in, watching the medical team sprint across the ring, watching Paige's left hand twitch once and then go still. Paige Whitmore was airlifted to Detroit Medical Center that night. Traumatic brain injury, induced coma. The doctor said she might never wake up. Wanda sat in the hallway of that hospital for 11 hours. Earl brought her coffee she didn't drink. He told her it wasn't her fault. He told her this was the sport. He told her Paige knew the risks. Wanda heard none of it. She stared at the white wall across from her and replayed that elbow over and over. The angle, the timing, the sound. She could have pulled it. She could have aimed lower. She chose the temple because it was the fastest ending. And now a woman might die because Wanda Yates wanted a clean knockout. She left Detroit 3 days later. Didn't tell Earl. Didn't tell anyone. She packed a duffel bag, bought a Greyhound ticket to Chicago, changed her phone number, and disappeared. She left behind her gloves, her trophies, her record, and every piece of the life she'd built since she was 14 years old. She swore she would never raise her hands again. Not in anger, not in defense, not for any reason. For 9 years, she kept that promise. She waited tables. She kept her head down. She wrapped her scarred knuckles in long sleeves and learned to live as someone who didn't matter. Until a man named Dominic Graves walked into Rosie's diner on a Saturday night and put his hands on her. Back in the present, Rosie's diner. The standoff between Wanda and Dominic still hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Dominic had turned away from her, dismissed her. He was already laughing again, already telling his men about the last woman who tried to talk back to him, already forgetting Wanda existed. That was how men like Dominic operated. People were either useful or invisible, and he'd already decided which one she was. But he wasn't done for the night. His eyes moved across the restaurant, scanning, the way a predator scans a herd for the weakest animal. And he found one. A girl, 17, maybe younger, sitting alone in a corner booth with a calculus textbook and a half-eaten plate of fries. Her name was Sophie. She came to Rosie's every Saturday night because it was the only place with free Wi-Fi that stayed open past 10. She had earbuds in and hadn't noticed the SUVs, hadn't noticed the 6 men, hadn't noticed Dominic Graves until he was standing right next to her booth. Now, what do we have here? Sophie looked up, pulled out one earbud. Confusion first, then recognition, then fear, fast, like a curtain dropping. Studying on a Saturday night? Dominic slid into the booth across from her, uninvited. That's no fun. Pretty girl like you shouldn't be alone. Let me keep you company. I'm okay, thank you. Sophie reached for her backpack. Bruno stepped forward and put his hand on the backpack strap. He said he's keeping you company. Sophie froze. Her fingers went white around her pencil. She looked toward the counter, toward Rick, toward anyone. Rick was already in the back office. The door was closed. Come on, sweetheart. Dominic leaned across the table. Don't be rude. I'm being nice. You should be grateful. Please, I just want to go home. Then go, he grinned, after you have a drink with me. Wanda saw it all from the counter, every second of it, and something inside her shifted. Not the cold, controlled thing from earlier, something deeper, something that had been buried for 9 years under guilt and grief and a promise she made to herself on a Greyhound bus. She saw Sophie's face, and she didn't see Sophie, she saw herself, 14 years old, group home on the east side of Detroit, sitting in a corner trying to read while older kids circled her. The feeling of being small, the feeling of knowing that nobody was coming to help, the feeling of praying for someone, anyone, to step in. Nobody stepped in for her. Not until Earl Brooks. Wanda set down the coffee pot. Her hands were steady, not shaking, not hesitating, steady the way they used to be before a fight, the way they were when she wrapped her knuckles in tape and touched gloves with someone who outweighed her by 20 pounds. She untied her apron, folded it once, set it on the counter. Tammy watched from the kitchen doorway. Wanda, don't. Wanda didn't hear her. Or maybe she did, and it didn't matter. She walked across the dining room, past the empty tables, past the booths full of people who wouldn't make eye contact, past Bruno, who barely registered her. She stopped at Sophie's booth and stood between the girl and Dominic Graves. Get up. Dominic looked at her like she was a fly that kept landing on his food. You again? She's a kid. Leave her alone. Or what? We already did this. You're gonna stand there and look tough and then go back to wiping tables. That's the ending. Every time. Wanda didn't blink. Her weight shifted. Left foot forward, right foot back. A stance so subtle that no one in the restaurant recognized it. But if Earl Brooks had been watching, he would have. Not this time. Dominic's smile faded. Not completely, but enough. Something in her voice had changed again. something in the way she stood. He couldn't name it, but some old animal part of his brain understood it perfectly. He just chose to ignore it. He shoved her, harder than before, both hands on her shoulders. Wanda didn't stumble this time. Time slowed down. Not in the way people describe in movies, not poetic, not cinematic. It slowed down the way it does when your brain shifts into a gear you forgot existed. When every sound sharpens, every movement registers, and the world narrows to a single point of contact. Dominic's shove landed on Wanda's shoulders, both hands, full force. He expected her to fly backward, expected her to hit a table, expected fear. What he got was nothing. Wanda absorbed the push. Her feet didn't slide, her body didn't rock. She took the force through her legs, bent her knees half an inch, and rooted herself to the floor like she was bolted there. 9 years of not fighting hadn't erased what was in her muscles. The hours, the drills, the thousands of reps. It was all still there, dormant, loaded, waiting. Dominic blinked. That was his first mistake. Second one, he swung. It wasn't trained. It wasn't technical. It was the kind of punch a man throws when he's angry and used to people being too afraid to dodge. A wide, looping right hand aimed at the side of her head. The kind of swing that works on people who've never been hit before. The kind that ends conversations in bars and parking lots when the other person doesn't know how to move. Wanda saw it before his shoulder turned. Second two, she slipped left, just her head, 4 inches. The fist sailed past her ear close enough that she could feel the air move against her skin. Her eyes never closed. Her hands never came up. She didn't need them yet. Dominic stumbled forward, his own momentum carrying him past where she'd been standing. Off balance, exposed, his right side wide open. Second three. Wanda stepped in, not forward, into his space, into the gap between his chest and his extended arm. Close enough to smell his cologne and the whiskey underneath it. Close enough to count the gold links on his chain. She planted her left foot between his legs. Second 4. Her right hand came up, not a fist, an open palm. She placed it flat against his chest, just below the collarbone. Firm, measured, like a doctor checking a heartbeat. Then she pushed. Not hard, not the way he'd pushed her. Just enough to freeze his weight on his back foot, just enough to make him lean backward by 2 inches. 2 inches was all she needed. Second 5. Her left hand gripped his right wrist, the hand that had swung at her. She pulled it across his body, twisting his torso clockwise. His feet crossed. His center of gravity drifted past the point of recovery. His balance was gone. He didn't know it yet, but he was already falling. He just hadn't hit the ground. Second 6. Wanda dropped her hips, low, fast. Her right hip drove into his midsection like a piston. A textbook hip toss. Ogoshi in judo. The kind Earl made her drill 500 times until she could execute it blindfolded, exhausted, in the dark. The kind that uses your opponent's weight against them. And Dominic Graves had a lot of weight to use. His feet left the floor. For 1 full second, a 240-pound man was airborne. His body rotated over Wanda's hip in an arc that physics demanded and pride refused to accept. The gold chain around his neck swung upward. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes caught the fluorescent lights on the ceiling, the same lights that buzzed above Wanda every morning when she wiped down the counter at 5:45. He landed on his back on the tile floor of Rosie's diner. The impact cracked 2 tiles. A sugar dispenser bounced off the nearest table and shattered against the baseboard. The sound was enormous, meat and bone against hard ground, the kind of sound that makes everyone in a room flinch at the same time. Second 7. Before Dominic could gasp, before air could return to his lungs, Wanda was on him. Her left knee pressed into the center of his back. Her right hand controlled his wrist, pulling his arm straight behind him at an angle that was 2 degrees from dislocation. An armbar from mount, modified, grounded, efficient. No wasted motion, no extra force. Just enough pressure to make him understand that his shoulder belonged to her now. Dominic's face was pressed against the cold tile. His eyes were wide. Not from pain, from shock. The complete, disorienting shock of a man who has never in his adult life been put on the ground by anyone, let alone a woman half his size in a diner apron. Second 8. Wanda leaned down. Her mouth was 2 inches from his ear. "Stay down." 2 words. Not shouted, not whispered, spoken with the calm certainty of someone who has done this before and knows exactly what happens if she has to do it again. She held the position for 3 more seconds. Then she released his arm, stood up, and stepped back. 1 step. 2 steps. She straightened her uniform, pushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear, and then she stood still. The restaurant was silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that happens when 46 people collectively forget how to breathe. Bruno had risen from his chair. His hand was inside his jacket, but he hadn't moved further. His eyes bounced between Dominic on the floor and Wanda standing 3 feet away, and something in the math didn't add up. He'd watched men get dropped in alleys and warehouses. He'd never seen it happen like this. That clean, that fast, that quiet. 2 of Dominic's men exchanged a look. The look said, "Who is she?" Dominic lay on the floor. His arm was still extended behind him, even though no one was holding it anymore. His chest heaved. His face burned red. Not from impact, but from something far worse. Humiliation. The kind that sits in a man's chest like acid. He'd been put on his back by a waitress, in front of his crew, in front of cameras, in a restaurant he walked into like he owned, and he hadn't landed a single finger on her. In the distance, sirens, then more, blue and red lights already bouncing off the front windows of Rosie's diner. Wanda stood in the middle of the dining room. Her hands hung at her sides. Her breathing was even. Her face showed nothing. But if you looked closely, really closely, you'd see her hands trembling. Not from fear, not from adrenaline, from the weight of knowing that the promise she'd carried for 9 years was lying in pieces on the floor next to Dominic Graves. The police came through the front door 40 seconds after the sirens stopped. 4 officers, hands on holsters. They expected a bar fight. They expected chaos. What they found was a 240-pound man sitting on the floor of a diner with his back against a booth, staring at the ceiling. And a woman in a waitress uniform standing 6 feet away, hands at her sides, breathing like she'd just taken a walk around the block. "Who called it in?" the lead officer asked. 3 people pointed at Dominic. 5 more pointed at their phones. It took the officers less than 10 minutes to piece it together. The security camera above the register had captured everything. The customer videos had captured everything. And when they ran Dominic Graves through the system, the screen lit up like a Christmas tree. Outstanding warrants, assault, racketeering, witness intimidation. The Southside Precinct had been building a case against him for 2 years. He'd just handed them the footage they needed. They cuffed him on the floor of Rosie's diner. Dominic didn't resist. Not because he was cooperative, because he was still trying to understand what had happened. His right shoulder ached. His back was bruised. 2 cracked tiles marked the exact spot where his reputation had landed. Bruno and the rest of the crew were lined up against the wall. Weapons found on 3 of them. All 6 were put in squad cars. The whole operation took 20 minutes. Efficient. Clean. Like the takedown that started it. When the last police car pulled away, the diner was quiet again, but a different kind of quiet. Not the silence of fear. The silence of people processing something they'd just witnessed that didn't fit into any category they had. Sophie was sitting in her booth. She hadn't moved. Her calculus textbook was still open to the same page. Her hands were folded in her lap, and tears ran down her face. Not from fear anymore, but from something she didn't have a word for yet. Relief, maybe, or gratitude, or the overwhelming feeling of being seen by a stranger when no one else would look. When Wanda walked past her toward the kitchen, Sophie reached out and caught her hand. "Thank you." Wanda looked down at the girl. For a moment, her mask cracked. The flat, professional expression she'd worn all night softened into something raw, something human. She squeezed Sophie's hand once, didn't say anything, then she let go and pushed through the swinging door into the kitchen. Tammy was standing by the sink. She'd watched through the round window, Her mascara was streaked, and she was holding a dish towel like a security blanket. "Wanda, who are you?" Wanda didn't answer. She walked to the far corner of the kitchen, sat down on an overturned milk crate, and put her face in her hands. She didn't cry, not at first. She sat there and breathed, in and out, in and out, the way Earl taught her to breathe after a fight. 4 counts in, 4 counts out, until the adrenaline drained and the shaking stopped. But this wasn't adrenaline. This was 9 years of silence breaking open, 9 years of pretending she was someone else, 9 years of telling herself that Wanda, the Viper, Yates, was dead. She wasn't dead. She was sitting on a milk crate in the back of a diner on the south side of Chicago. And for the first time in 9 years, she didn't know who she was anymore. Outside, in the dining room, a 16-year-old kid named Devin was uploading a video to TikTok. He'd captured the whole thing, from the moment Dominic shoved Wanda to the moment she said, "Stay down." 47 seconds of footage. He typed a caption. "Waitress just bodied a whole Mafia boss in 8 seconds. I'm shaking." He hit post. Within 1 hour, the video had 200,000 views. By midnight, it had crossed 2 million. By Sunday morning, every local news station in Chicago had picked it up. The caption changed with every repost, but the core stayed the same. Who is the waitress? Nobody knew. Not yet. But by morning, they would. And Wanda Yates, the woman who had spent 9 years making sure no one ever noticed her, was about to become the most noticed person in the country. By Sunday afternoon, Waitress Knockout was the #1 trending topic on every major platform. The original TikTok had been reposted, recut, slow-motioned, and analyzed frame by frame by millions of people who couldn't believe what they were watching. Sports commentators broke down the technique. "That's a textbook ogoshi," said a former Olympic judo coach on ESPN. "Whoever this woman is, she didn't learn that in a self-defense class. That's competition level. That's thousands of hours of mat time." MMA analysts ran the footage in slow motion. They counted the seconds. They measured the hip rotation. They pointed out the head slip in second 2, the one that looked effortless but required the kind of timing that only comes from years of live sparring. The internet wanted a name, and the internet always gets what it wants. A sports journalist named Craig Sullivan was the first to make the connection. He'd covered regional MMA in the Midwest for 15 years. He'd been at the Fox Theater the night Wanda fought Paige Whitmore, and when he watched the diner footage for the 3rd time, something clicked. He pulled up old fight tape, compared the head movement, the stance, the way she planted her left foot before the throw. It was the same. 9 years older, 20 pounds lighter, wearing a diner uniform instead of fight shorts. But it was the same fighter. He published the article at 4:17 on Sunday afternoon. The headline read, "Rosie's Diner Waitress Identified as the Viper, Undefeated MMA Fighter Who Vanished 9 years Ago." The article went nuclear. Within 2 hours, every major outlet had picked it up. Wanda's old fight record resurfaced. 14-0, 11 knockouts, the youngest female fighter in Michigan history to headline a professional card. Retired at 19 under mysterious circumstances. The kind of record that makes people ask, what if she hadn't stopped? And then the Paige Whitmore story resurfaced. The internet split in half. One side called Wanda a hero, a woman who walked away from violence, lived quietly, and only fought again to protect a child. The other side called her dangerous, a trained fighter who hospitalized her last opponent and had been hiding in plain sight for nearly a decade. Comment sections turned into battlegrounds. Think pieces flooded every outlet. The ethics of walking away. When heroes don't want to be found. The Viper's return. Justice or vigilantism? Wanda saw none of it. She was in her apartment, a studio on the 3rd floor of a building on 91st Street, with a radiator that clanked and a window that overlooked a laundromat. She'd unplugged her phone, pulled the curtains, sat on the edge of her bed in the dark and listened to the radiator tick. Someone knocked on her door around 6 in the evening. She didn't answer. The knocking stopped. 10 minutes later, it started again. Wanda, it's Tammy. I brought you food. You don't have to open the door. I'm just going to leave it here. A pause. Then Tammy's voice again, softer. You don't have to hide anymore. You know that, right? Whatever you're running from, you don't have to run anymore. Wanda heard the bag rustle as Tammy set it down, heard her footsteps fade down the hallway. She waited 5 minutes, then opened the door and brought the bag inside. Fried catfish from Rosie's, still warm. She sat on the floor and ate it with her hands. The next morning, something happened that Wanda didn't expect. Paige Whitmore posted a video. Paige was 32 now. She lived in Columbus, Ohio. She worked as a physical therapist, the kind of irony that only real life produces. She'd recovered fully from the brain injury 3 years after the fight. She had a scar above her left ear and occasional migraines, but she was alive. She was healthy. She was okay. The video was filmed in her living room. No makeup, no script, just Paige sitting on a couch with her hands folded in her lap. I know you're watching this, Wanda. Or at least I hope you are. I've thought about you every year since that night. Not with anger, not with blame. I got into that ring knowing what could happen. We both did. That's the deal we make when we fight. She paused, wiped her eye with the back of her hand. I forgave you a long time ago. A long time ago. I just need you to know that. And I need you to forgive yourself. Because what I saw in that diner video, that woman who stood up for that girl, that's who you are. That's who you've always been. Don't run from that. The video hit 10 million views in 12 hours. The comment section was a wall of hearts and crying emojis and people tagging Wanda's name. And in a dark apartment on 91st Street, Wanda Yates sat on the edge of her bed, watched Paige Whitmore tell her it was okay, and cried for the first time in 9 years. Earl Brooks saw the video too. He was sitting in Iron House, alone, the gym closed for the night. The same gym, the same cracked floor, the same sign above the door. He picked up his phone and called a number he hadn't tried in years. This time, he had the right one. It rang 4 times. Then a voice, quiet, broken, familiar. Earl? Yeah, baby girl, it's me. Neither of them said anything for a long time, and that was enough. Dominic Graves' arraignment was held on a Tuesday morning in Cook County Criminal Court. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled every seat. Camera crews lined the hallway outside. The man who once walked into restaurants like he owned them now walked into a courtroom in an orange jumpsuit and ankle chains. The charges were extensive: assault, criminal intimidation, harassment, unlawful restraint. And those were just from Saturday night. Once Dominic was in the system, the floodgates opened. The Cook County State's attorney added racketeering charges that had been building for 2 years. Witness intimidation from a case in 2024. Extortion tied to 3 South Side businesses. Tax evasion. Money laundering through a chain of dry cleaners he owned on paper but never visited. 15 charges total. His bail was set at $2 million. His attorney, a man named Victor Hall, who wore suits that cost more than most people's rent, tried to redirect. He filed a motion claiming that Wanda had assaulted his client, that she was a trained fighter who had used excessive force, that Dominic was the victim. The judge, a woman named Sandra Collins, who had been on the bench for 23 years and had exactly 0 patience for theatrics, watched the security footage from Rosie's diner in open court. The entire courtroom watched it with her. They watched Dominic dump water on Wanda, watched him insult her, watched him grab her apron, watched him corner a 17-year-old girl, watched him shove Wanda twice, watched him swing at her head, and then they watched Wanda end it in 8 seconds without throwing a single punch. Judge Collins looked at Victor Hall over the top of her glasses. Counselor, your client initiated physical contact on 3 separate occasions. He attempted to strike a woman who had not raised a hand. He cornered a minor. And the respondent used the minimum force necessary to neutralize the threat. If this is your definition of excessive force, I'd suggest you revisit your legal education. The motion was denied. Victor Hall sat down and didn't speak again for the rest of the hearing. Outside the courthouse, the media swarmed. Reporters shouted questions at anyone connected to the case. A local news anchor tried to get a statement from Dominic's crew members, all of whom had been released on bond. Bruno walked past the cameras without a word. His jaw was tight. His eyes were on the ground. The empire that had taken Dominic 20 years to build was crumbling in real time, and every man who had stood behind him was now calculating how fast they could distance themselves. Wanda wasn't at the courthouse. She'd declined every interview request, every talk show invitation, every book deal and documentary pitch that had flooded her inbox through Rosie's Diner's landline. She didn't want fame. She didn't want vindication. She wanted the one thing she'd wanted since she was 19 years old, to be left alone. But something had shifted, and she knew it. The phone call with Earl had lasted 43 minutes. Most of it was silence. The kind of silence between two people who have too much to say and no idea where to start. Earl didn't push. He didn't lecture. He just stayed on the line. And when Wanda finally spoke, she didn't talk about the fight. She didn't talk about Dominic or the video or the millions of people who now knew her name. She talked about Paige. She forgave me, Earl. I know. I don't know how to do that. Forgive myself. You don't have to figure that out tonight. 3 days later, a letter arrived at Rosie's Diner. No return address. Handwritten on lined notebook paper. It was from Sophie. Dear Wanda, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't even know if I should write it, but I need you to know something. Before Saturday night, I thought that being strong meant not needing anyone. That if nobody was going to help, then I had to learn to handle everything alone. You showed me that's not true. Being strong isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and still standing between someone and the thing that scares them. Thank you for standing. Sophie. Wanda read the letter twice, folded it carefully, put it in her apron pocket. Then she picked up her phone and called Earl back. I want to teach. 2 words, and Earl Brooks, for the first time in 9 years, smiled. 6 months later, the gym was small, a converted auto shop on 83rd and Racine, Southside Chicago. The landlord gave Wanda a deal because he'd seen the video and because no one else wanted the space. The floors were concrete, same as Iron House. The walls were cinder block. The ceiling leaked when it rained. She named it Viper's Den. Earl painted the sign himself. It took him 3 days because his hands weren't as steady as they used to be, but he wouldn't let anyone help. My gym, my signs, he said, even though it wasn't his gym. But it was. In every way that mattered, it was his, too. He'd driven from Detroit to Chicago in a rented U-Haul with nothing but his training pads, a heavy bag, and a box of VHS tapes from fights he used to study in the 90s. He moved into a 1-bedroom apartment 4 blocks from the gym, close enough to walk. The first class was on a Wednesday evening. Wanda expected maybe 5 people. She'd put up flyers at laundromats and corner stores. Free self-defense classes for women and girls. No experience necessary, no fees, no questions asked. 23 people showed up. They came in all shapes. A grandmother who'd been mugged twice on her way home from church. A college student who worked night shifts at a gas station. A mother of 3 who'd left a man she never talked about. 2 teenage girls who came together and stood in the back with their arms crossed until Wanda showed them a wrist escape and they forgot to be too cool for it. And Sophie, front row, notebook in hand. The same girl who'd been studying calculus in a corner booth the night everything changed. Wanda stood in front of them in sweatpants and a tank top. No gloves, no wraps. For the first time in public, her scarred knuckles were visible. She didn't hide them. I'm not going to teach you how to fight, she said. I'm going to teach you how to not be afraid. There's a difference. Fighting is what happens when everything else fails. What I want to give you is everything else. Earl stood in the corner, arms folded, watching. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The look on his face said what 20 years of searching for the right words never could. Pride. The kind that sits quiet and doesn't need an audience. The classes ran every Wednesday and Saturday. Within 2 months, Wanda had a waiting list. Local news did a segment, then national news. Then a documentary crew from New York showed up and filmed for 3 weeks. Wanda let them film the classes but refused to be interviewed on camera. She pointed them to her students instead. "Talk to them," she said. "It's their story." She still worked at Rosie's, Tuesday and Thursday mornings. She didn't need the money anymore. Donations had come in from across the country after the video, enough to keep the gym running for 2 years. But she liked the diner. She liked the routine. She liked that Gerald still ordered his eggs scrambled dry and that Mrs. Patterson still wanted her toast almost burnt. Some mornings she'd get there at 5:45, unlock the front door and stand behind the counter in the quiet. Same fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, same smell of bleach and coffee. And she'd think about the woman who used to stand here, the one who was hiding, the one who flinched when the TV showed a fight, the one who changed the channel to the weather. That woman was gone. Not erased, not forgotten, just outgrown. Dominic Graves' trial concluded in March. 12 years in federal prison. No parole eligibility for 8. When the verdict was read, his attorney looked at the floor. Dominic looked straight ahead. He didn't look like a man who ran the South Side. He looked like a man who'd finally run out of people willing to be afraid of him. Wanda didn't watch the verdict. She was at the gym teaching a Thursday evening class. She was showing a 14-year-old girl how to break a wrist grip, the same move Earl had taught her when she was 14. The girl got it on the 3rd try. Her face lit up. She looked at Wanda like she'd just discovered she was allowed to take up space in the world. Wanda smiled, a real one, the kind she hadn't worn in years. "Again," she said, and the girl did it again.
8 seconds, that's all it took for 9 years of silence to shatter on the floor of a dinner. Wanda didn't break her promise because she wanted to find again. She broke it because a girl in the corner booth needed someone to stand up, and nobody else would. That's the thing about burying who you are. You can change your name, your city, your whole life, but the moment someone who can't protect themselves is standing right in front of you, the truth doesn't ask permission. It just moves. Paige Whitmore knew that. She didn't forgive Wanda because the pain didn't matter. She forgave her because guilt that never ends becomes its own kind of cage, and Wanda had already served 9 years in hers, so here's what I can't stop thinking about. What's the difference between walking away from who you are and walking away from people who need you to be exactly that? And if the thing you're most afraid of about yourself is the same thing that could save someone else, how long do you keep it locked away? Drop your answer in the comments. If this one hit different, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you in the next one.